Hi, everyone. I wanted to start out looking at where a lot of companies are in their transition to Agile and/or Lean or Kanban. And we've been doing Scrum and Net Objectives since, I guess about 2000, pretty soon after we started as a technical training company. And the Scrum model is a powerful one, but it's also a kind of simple one in that, you have a if you're not familiar with Scrum, just a quick reflection is you have a person called the product owner who's responsible for what is to be built, and then you have the development team with a Scrum Master who acts as a coach basically for the team and helps remove impediments of the team and talks to management for the team and basically keeps the team where they can focus on their work. And it actually works extremely well at a team level. And the concept is that any impediments that come up, actually you need to resolve anything that's in the way. But what tends to happen is that as you try to scale Scrum, it's not that Scrum fails, but Scrum is great, but Scrum is kind of not really intended for the scaling aspect. As you get multiple product owners and multiple stakeholders, the Scrum model kind of starts becoming a smaller piece of a bigger picture. And the question is, can you really scale it from the bottom up? So now here where we have multiple stakeholders and multiple teams, and you even have, like, say, an integration team, as it gets bigger and bigger, it gets to be more complex a situation. And the idea is, well, how do you actually get a big picture view of this? Now, there is an idea that, in fact, you can, because all this is fractal. We had a team, one team before, and the intermediate step I had here is I have a few teams, a few product owners and a few stakeholders, and in this final situation I'm talking about as an enterprise, you have different business lines. And there's the idea of, well, fractals will work because, you've got this team of teams and all that. But in fact, inter-team dynamics are quite different from intra-team dynamics. In other words, how members in a team work together is different than how members across teams work together. This isn't really because people are anything wrong with them. It's just really the tribal nature of people. That's just how we work. People are more concerned with the people that they work with on a daily basis. Quite obvious if you just consider your family. Your family is the most important people in your life. And in reality, are they the most important people on the planet? Well, not really, because mine are. And I'm just kidding. But it feels that way to me because I'm tribal. So what happens then is, even though the structure may be fractal, in other words, at the small level it looks the same, at the bigger level it looks the same, at the biggest level, it doesn't mean that they all work that way. In other words, the structure can be of this type, but it doesn't mean teams of teams are going to work the same way as a team works, because there's more of a tribal bonding at the team level. And if you base your transition on the notion of we can get team of teams because teams work so well, you're actually not going to work as well as you might. Now, some people suggest that we need to do this because complex systems are really complex. You cannot predict anything. You cannot have any structure. But actually, complex systems still have patterns to them. There's a difference between what I call micro-predictability and what's called macro-predictability. And I kind of joke about it. Micro-predictability is if you're at a casino, you may not know whether the next roll is going to be a black or a red or even a green. But you do know more money staying at the table over the long run than is leaving. So there are patterns, and there is some level of predictability at this complex scale, and the question is, what can we do about this? And my suggestion is the attempt to scale Agile is very much kind of like what's there. You look at that, and it's kind of a little bit difficult. Right? You try to read that for a second. What does that say? It says we have got it backwards and upside down. And I'm going to explain this as when I say backwards, in that I'm going to introduce this notion of a value stream, and I'm going to suggest that we're looking not from the front, but from the back of the value stream, and that we should be looking at how to scale at an enterprise level, not from the bottom, but from the top. And I'm not talking about a command and control. I'm talking about something else, but we have to kind of introduce systems thinking to get there. Now, systems thinking has a few concepts about it, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But the first one is that the process of understanding how things influence one another as a whole. In other words, you look at it holistically. There's also a belief that in systems thinking, a lot of the local decisions are caused really by the system itself. So a lot of the errors people make are not so much due to the people, but due to the fact that they're in a situation that's kind of untenable. We saw this early, actually, at Net Objectives. We started out a company as a technical training company. we got into Scrum real early in our history, just a year after we formed in '99. In 2000, we started doing Agile as an offering because we saw that although there was a lot of drama from the, about the technical folks, the testers and the developers, it was really more they had it last, so it obviously was their fault. But in fact, a lot of the challenges were due to things kind of upstream, other parts of the system. So we realized, in fact, we knew this from earlier experience, that bad behavior is often due to bad systems that people are in. Good systems won't guarantee good results, though, because you still need good people. But bad systems will almost certainly guarantee bad results. So you need good systems and good people. So sometimes people misinterpret systems thinking as thinking people aren't important, but in fact it's just the opposite. It's because people are important. You need to encourage them to build good systems so they can get value, and you need that to happen. So you have to look at the whole piece. So let's take another aspect of this of what do I mean by systems thinking. And here I mean, like, let's look at, what part of the airplane is responsible for flight. Well, except for perhaps the seat, everything is. I mean, you really can't change any part of the plane and have it still work well. You can't just put a bigger engine on thinking, oh, that'll be great, because the wing may not have enough lift to support it. You can't add more bigger wings, because if you don't change the engine, that might not support it. There are all sorts of things. They all interact with each other. It's really kind of silly to talk about what part of the airplane is responsible for flight. The whole airplane is responsible for flight. So we need this concept in Lean. It's a fundamental concept called the value stream. It needs to be understood, because this gives us a way to bind everything together. And the value stream, in a nutshell, is that part of where a concept comes in. It gets selected. Now, it may not come in literally from the customers, but it's for the benefit of the customers. It gets selected by the business. Different capabilities are identified and then selected, given to development, and then it goes back to the customer where they consume it. This is called concept to consumption. And in fact, the value stream is this path of, it's called the value stream from concept. It's about, because at that point there's not much value, but by the time it gets consumed, there's a lot of value. So it's this stream of how is value added. And we can think of our value stream as kind of our, system for developing cash. Now, it's funny, I put management in there at the end because in the Agile world, management has been somewhat the forgotten role. It's almost like, hey, let's keep the managers away so the teams can get the job done. But that ignores the holistic nature of the problem. Then we're only looking at the development team. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. This is why very many Agile transitions work quite well at the team, but then they seem to kind of stop and stutter, because the management system in some cases is actually being actively ignored when it actually is a very critical role. So we need to attend to it. We want to think of our value stream as this cash pipeline, but all too often it's actually not that at all, but something else. So what we want to do is, well, what's the difference between a cash pipeline and a bog? Excuse me, we want to look at what are our challenges. What's holding us up? What's stopping the value stream from being a really good stream? Well, if we come back to looking at the value stream, a little bit of reflection will give us why maybe a focus on the development team doesn't work so well. As in fact, again, why the model is insufficient, but it's not just a question of just the team. There are many places that things can go wrong. So, of course, not doing incremental development, not having poor engineering practices, the two that are talked about the most, those are quite important. And yes, we definitely need to attend to these. And most Agile methods, such as, Scrum, extreme programming, do quite well here. But what about having too many selected projects that tend to overwhelm the team? And yes, again, something like Scrum with time boxing and you pull off the product owner is supposed to stop this, but the key word there is supposed to, because if there's not a mechanism to create an overall view, management often doesn't really buy into that. The stakeholders still talk about, well, we need this stuff done by then, and there's no mechanism for that to get around it. So we have a challenge here, and there's no real visibility on how to improve it, because people are talking about a bottom-up approach, and kind of from, again, the middle or end of the value stream. Not using the notion of a minimum marketable feature. These are sometimes called minimum viable products, minimum viable features. We actually now prefer to call them minimum valuable increments. We've